What's up guys, Derek, moreplates.com. Today we're going to be talking about Test versus Deca, or more specifically, Nandrolone, Deca being the ester, Nandrolone decanoate. We're looking at 300 milligrams of testosterone pitted up against 300 milligrams of Nandrolone. Like milligram for milligram, which one is stronger, which one builds more muscle? That's what we're going to be looking at here. And there's a good study I can pull up to really kind of elucidate this for you guys and kind of get a more like science-backed rather than just anecdotal experience sort of perspective on this. Okay, so this study is from 1991. A better time for anabolics. We examined the extent to which supraphysiological, our favorite word, doses of androgen can modify body composition and strength in normally viralized men. In doubly blind tests, 30 healthy young men received testosterone enanthate or 19-nortestosterone decanoate, Nandrolone decanoate, at 100 milligrams per week or 300 milligrams per week for 6 weeks. So this is the most tightly controlled, comparison. We have the literal drug milligram for milligram up against each other. The testosterone enanthate 100 milligram per week group served as a replacement dose comparison, maintaining pre-treatment serum testosterone levels. So this is essentially saying that 100 milligrams per week of enanthate, after you cleave the ester off, you're essentially left with what would be equivalent to that of therapeutic endogenous androgen production, while keeping all subjects blinded to treatment, particularly through reduction in testicular volumes. Isokinetic strength measurements were made for the biceps and quadriceps before treatment and 2 to 3 days after the 6th injection. Small improvements were noted in all groups, but the changes were highly variable. A trend to greater and more consistent strength gain occurred in the testosterone enanthate 300 milligram per week group. There was no change in weight for testosterone enanthate 100 milligrams per week, but an average gain of 3 kilograms in each of the other groups. No changes in skin fold thicknesses or in estimated percent body fat were observed. Of 15 circumferences, significant increases were observed only for men receiving testosterone enanthate 300 milligrams per week in the shoulders and Nandrolone decanoate 300 milligrams per week, shoulders and chest. The data suggests that high-dose androgens increase body mass and may increase strength in normal men, but except for a consistent weight gain with greater than replacement doses, the detectable changes were highly variable and relatively small, especially in comparison to the significant alterations which were observed for other markers of androgen action. So the introduction to the study basically outlines how androgens with a high myotrophic to androgenic ratio, so anabolic to androgenic activity, have a preferential effect on growth of blah, 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 of muscle relative to prostate, such as methandrostenolone, which is D-bol, and 19-nortestosterone, Nandrolone, are especially popular with athletes. Bodybuilders claim from anecdotal experience that these steroids increase muscle size without producing unwanted side effects, blah, 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 blah. So basically they're, trying to assess whether new anabolic agents that have been developed to be more tissue specific and selective, like D-bol and Deca, are any better than tests like apparently bodybuilders claim from anecdotal experience. So here, few studies have compared these androgens to testosterone to demonstrate which actions are enhanced in an anabolic steroid in normal men. And surprisingly, there are no studies which have examined the effect of greater than replacement doses of testosterone on muscular strength and size. 2 androgen esters, blah, blah, blah. So basically here they choose 2 esters with similar half-lives to kind of match the most popular drugs used anecdotally, as well as the fact that the pharmacokinetics line up pretty closely. Testosterone enanthate, Nandrolone decanoate have similar half-lives. Interesting, similar half-times. Never seen it referred to as that. To elimination of about 1 week. However, their metabolism to other biologically active compounds is different, and this could be expected to modify their physiological activity. And then basically they outline how 5-alpha reduction of Deca to dihydronandrolone reduces the AR binding affinity, which implies less action on androgen-affected organs and whatnot. Testosterone is aromatized to 17-beta estradiol. Nandrolone is not. It's not a potent substrate for aromatase, and this is why they probably affect tissues differently as well. Here, compared the effects of testosterone and Nandrolone at 2 doses. One is the close to replacement, And one is threefold higher than physiological levels in normal men given the drug for 6 weeks. So this is only a 6-week blast phase we have here. 30 men were chosen, 27 years of age, plus or minus 5. So 20 to 37 is the full range. 2 subjects, and this is kind of just breaking down their what they do and their lifestyles and whatnot. 9 regularly worked out already. The rest didn't, which is notable because obviously you're going to be more of a hyper responder, or at least perception wise, you're going to be more of a hyper responder in a table of just showing pure data if you've never really done a proper resistance training regimen. If you do undertake one once you jump on gear, obviously. So anyways, they got 1 shot a week, which is obviously stupid, but anyways, it's fine with this half-life. It's not ideal, but it certainly is better than not having this study. Each subject received either testosterone, so deletestrel, which is actually a very notable pharma testosterone brand, and Durabol and Organon. Deletestrel is still actually prescribed to this day, which is notable. Then basically they go into how they measured skin folds and whatnot. Body weight increased significantly with testosterone at 300 mg per week and with both doses of Nandrolone, but not with the replacement dose of test at 100 milligrams per week. So in the 100 milligram dose group of test, 4 subjects decreased and 4 increased in weight. Body weight increased in each subject in each of the other 3 treatment groups, except for 1 subject lost half of a kilogram on 100 mg of Deca per week. Strength increased significantly during the experiment for both knee and elbow measurement in all groups, except the test 100 milligram group did not change. Improvements were the greatest in all tests with test E 300 mg per week, but this trend was not significantly different from the improvements in the other treatment groups. When these improvements were compared to those produced by replacement dose of testosterone, only the 300 milligram group showed significantly greater improvements. For the measurement demonstrating the largest improvement, percent change in measured strength was significantly correlated with serum testosterone measured after 6 weeks of treatment among the men receiving either dose of testosterone. So we look at this chart here. We see initial body composition and strength measures and change or percent change after 6 weeks of androgen administration. So this is interesting to me, not only because this shows tit for tat exactly how Nandrolone stacks up to test, but 6 weeks is kind of like the golden sweet spot where a lot of guys will claim that gains fall off the map. So it's kind of just interesting to see how much really was accrued in this time frame. It's not like and then we can compare that 6-week time frame to other studies done on these same compounds to get an assessment of kind of like average lean body mass gains and sort of extrapolate whether or not gains halt at week 6 or not, which is something I might delve into in another video. But anyways, I kind of like the framework of this study. So body weight, we have the baseline and the change. So you can see here in the replacement test group of just like TRT, essentially, almost no change in body weight, almost no change in body fat percentage. And yeah, nothing really notable. Now in the 300 milligram group of test per week, we have 3.4 kilograms gained in 6 weeks, while simultaneously losing 0.7% body fat on average. Now, this isn't only in 7 subjects, of course, obviously, and a lot of this is going to be water weight at the end of the day, which should be noted too when we're comparing to Nandrolone monotherapy. And then we have the changes in isokinetic tests, and we can see the changes here are much more significant than the other group. And they're way more significant than the corresponding Nandrolone dosages as well, which is notable as well. Nandrolone decanoate at 100 milligrams per week, interestingly enough, isn't that much different on the isokinetic tests compared to the 300 milligram group. But remember, this is a small sample size, but still it's really interesting how some of these numbers are pretty similar for 3 times less of the dose. The body weight increased by 2.7 kilograms on 100 mg of Nandrolone per week, which is substantial considering they lost 0.3% body fat. So Nandrolone on its own, you're going to crush your estrogen production, crush your endogenous testosterone production, which pretty much wipes out your source of aromatization into estradiol. Whatever trace backdoor conversion you're getting from, like adrenal hormones and, like estrone converting to estradiol is going to be completely negligible at both of these dosages. But we still, even with subpar estrogen, shut down test and a drug which honestly doesn't really bloat when it's used on its own without test complementing it, having a 2.7 kilogram gain with still losing 0.3% body fat on only 100 milligrams per week is pretty substantial. And then the 300 milligram per week group, 3.3 kilograms gained. But interestingly enough, they gained 1.1% body fat. So not really consistent in the comparisons. But again, there's a lot of variables that are going to come into play, as well as the sample sizes being very small. Now, interestingly, we can go look at the markers of exogenous androgen administration before and during androgen administration, so we can see how shut down they are, their estrogen levels, SHBG, etc. So luteinizing hormone expectedly kind of almost gets like slashed a little more than in half on both the testosterone dosages. FSH goes down. Testosterone goes from 28 to 34. So this is actually greater than therapeutic levels technically, or greater than endogenous androgen production, because 100 milligrams per week is increasing their test levels. So obviously that's more than what these guys were producing. Estradiol stayed about the same though, which is interesting. SHBG relatively unaffected. Apolipoprotein A decreased a bit. Sperm count decreased, obviously. Testicular volume decreased. Now, 300 milligrams per week of test. LH, FSH, same thing we expect. Test pretty much triples. Estradiol over, not triples, but it's pretty damn close. SHBG only dropped by 6 nanomoles per liter, which is interesting. And the apolipoprotein A1, we have the decrease to 1.28. Sperm count gets destroyed. Testicular volume destroyed. Well, not destroyed, but just significantly less, obviously. Nandrolone, 100 milligrams per week. Same kind of trend. Test gets slashed in half down to 10. Estradiol, look how much this gets wiped out. 112 goes down to 40. And this is, I don't even know if this is using a sensitive assay or not. For all we know, this could be picking up trace amounts of estrone, estriol, whatever else is there conflicting with the variables. We've already seen what happens when you test your estradiol on Deca only with a Roche electrochemiluminescence radioimmunoassay. It is inaccurate as fuck. So you need to get a sensitive assay test done. Let's just give them the benefit of the doubt and assume it is. And we only have a 40, which obviously means it's getting crushed there. SHBG goes up, which is super interesting considering the estrogen goes down and we are on an exogenous androgen. And then here, kind of what you would expect from sperm count, testicular volume. Now in the 300 milligram per week group, testosterone, it's exactly the same, which is interesting. Estradiol though, goes up by 10. But again, obviously we have a baseline that's a bit different. It's starting at 146. So it's still decreasing very, very substantially. So I'm not really attributing this more so to trace conversion to estrone, to estradiol. I'm more so attributing it to the fact that they had a better baseline they were working off of, and that's why they are 10 higher than the previous group with the 100 milligram Deca per week. So we're getting almost 1/3 of the estrogen we had at baseline, and SHBG dropped by 5, and then the rest self-explanatory. So basically, what do we get out of this? High-dose androgen administration produced linear increases in weekly measurements of body weight. The weight change reflected a change occurring primarily in the fat-free component, since an increase in fat weight would have been detected by an increase in skin fold thicknesses and abdominal circumferences. This is also consistent with our previous observations using underwater weighing of men treated with high-dose testosterone enanthate for 12 weeks. The average weight gain produced by 300 milligrams per week of these two parenteral androgens is comparable to the 3.3 kilogram increase reported for a group of men with similar characteristics following 6 weeks of treatment with 100 milligrams per day methandrostenolone, which if you haven't seen that video, I did the video on 6 weeks of D-bol recently, which I'm pretty sure this is the same study they're referencing. The orally active androgen, which is most frequently used by athletes. So that's interesting how in the 90s, D-bol was still the #1 used compound, according to this anyways. These changes appear to involve a specific myotrophic action rather than simply the water retention suggested from some earlier investigations. This is suggested by observed increases in fiber size in muscle biopsies and by increases in total body potassium and nitrogen, but the precise nature of these changes remains to be defined. So jumping to the end of this, in summary, differences between the two androgens were noted at the lower dose, 100 milligrams per week, including an anabolic weight gain effect, which did not occur with testosterone enanthate, and the suggestion of a reduced effect on testicular function by nandrolone decanoate. at a high dose, 300 milligrams per week. These differences were abolished, and the actions of testosterone enanthate and nandrolone decanoate were substantially the same, including a similar anabolic weight gain effect. Whether or not these two androgens differentially increase strength remains to be established. So basically what we can gather from this is test is better than nandrolone for gaining strength, which in practical application, I'd say is actually pretty reflects what actually happens in real life. However, the muscle gain, honestly, it's not that much different. And in real life, I think it is the fact that nandrolone is not a potent substrate for aromatase. And with even that considered, milligram for milligram still pretty much stacks up to test for muscle growth. Just shows how potent of a compound it is. In my opinion, it's almost like trenbolone. You'll note trenbolone in cattle when they administer it in a monotherapy fashion versus trenbolone compounded with 17-beta estradiol. The difference in muscle growth is substantial. And the reason being because trenbolone is not a potent substrate for aromatase. So lack of sufficient estradiol, lack of sufficient growth, regardless of the amount of anabolic presence. So you're going to have all your pathways optimized for growth with enough estradiol, and you're not if you just don't. So when you wipe out estradiol by shutting down endogenous tests with Deca, you will have subpar growth. However, if you can add the amount of estradiol necessary to optimize anabolic processes in conjunction with it, then I think it would actually outperform testosterone in a muscle growth context, milligram for milligram. Now, obviously, you can't really, say, oh, it's better if you add this because, we're comparing one compound to one compound. We can't really say, well, nandrolone plus estrogen is better than test because that's adding two drugs now. But with that being said, you kind of get the point. I would say test is stronger in a, force production context for strength. Nandrolone is probably as good at building muscle, and really that is the takeaway. But again, some of those changes from the testosterone might be significantly influenced by the aromatization itself, causing kind of like a disproportionate increase in actual contractile tissue relative to water retention, because nandrolone on its own, especially when estrogen is crushed into the ground, is going to be way drier than test. So is the lean mass gained more muscle from the nandrolone? Maybe. There's actually a plausible argument for that milligram for milligram, it's actually going to produce not the same, even though on paper they might have the same similar increases in lean body mass. But nandrolone monotherapy is not going to increase water retention. It's going to crush the estrogen into the ground when it's used in monotherapy, like I said. So the gains from the nandrolone in all of these clinical studies are dry. It's like pure contractile tissue, basically, rather than with test. There's going to be more water retention associated with it. So the lean body mass increases are a bit more inflated with the test. So, at the end of the day, at the least, they're probably equal in the muscle building category, but there's definitely an argument that nandrolone milligram for milligram may actually produce more contractile tissue than testosterone. So take from that what you will. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. This was just another interesting study I thought I'd bring to your attention. I've been sitting on for a while and is a good reference point in my opinion, because there's not a lot of controlled studies with fixed cycle duration with a dosage that is actually useful to reference, and using compounds on humans that may otherwise not be evaluated in current day at the dosages we're actually interested in seeing the effects of at those dosages with those compounds, and comparing it to things like, like high doses of D-bol and stuff like that. You just don't see that kind of stuff anymore, and you probably won't in the future, unfortunately. So anyways, take from that what you will. Thank you guys for watching. Please like, subscribe. Check out my blog, moreplatesmoredates.com. Follow me on Instagram at moreplates_moredates, Facebook, Snapchat, BitChute, Twitter, TikTok, Apple Podcasts, wherever I am. If you listen to the podcast, please drop a 5-star rating. It helps the algorithm there, as well as the comments here help the algorithm. Your algorithm comments are always funny and appreciated, and I love reading through them, and helps push the video to a new audience, obviously. So that is, helping grow the community and the brand and whatnot. So that's always appreciated. And first of all, if you want to sign up for the mailing list, I highly recommend you do if you want to get sent my more elaborate deep dives into bodybuilding pharmacology. Those articles are free if you sign up for the list, and you won't get sent those otherwise. And they have deep dives and concise subsections with table of contents and all the hyperlinks to the clinical studies I reference. Link there for you to delve into deeper yourself for your own personal research if you wish. If you want to support the channel, check out my anything I'm associated with, my TRT clinic. If you feel you are a candidate for hormone optimization, that is something you want to pursue, it's definitely worth reaching out. It's free to talk to one of our patient care coordinators and kind of assess your current health status and from there kind of decide and see if there are any hormonal imbalances or deficiencies that need addressing, and how to go about addressing those in the safest and most responsible way possible. And if you end up going with a HRT regimen, then you will get $50 off your first treatment if you use the coupon code MPMD50. And if you want to support Gorilla Mind, my nootropics and pre-workout formulas, you can check that out too. Anything else I'm associated with is in the video description below as well. So thank you guys for watching. Talk to you soon.